Hello, and welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. Each episode, we talk about a particular topic in the life of a professor. We are tenure-track faculty members in the sciences, working at a primarily undergraduate university in California. The purpose of our podcast is reflection, so we bring something we think is working and something we're working on to discuss.
Hello, this is the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. I'm Ruth.
And I'm Claire.
And today we're going to be talking about grading. But before we do that, Claire, how was your week?
My week was good. I had one of those weeks where all the instruments in the lab seemed to be breaking.
Oh, lovely.
And so as of yesterday, there were 3/4 of the instruments that my students were supposed to work on next week were not working. But today, I got 2 of them working. And so now we're at 3/4 are working, which is much more comfortable for me.
So, okay, I'm just like, but do you have a lot of experience with machinery fixing?
I'm getting more and more.
You're like, now I do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, so in grad school, I would have my own particular stuff that I worked on, which was kind of a homemade setup. So I got good with that. And then, yeah, I guess the instruments that I've worked on with my research here, I've gotten more comfortable with, but then I'm teaching instrumental analysis, so we're specifically going through a wide range of instruments. So a lot of them I'm not super comfortable with. Other faculty, like, so today I was working on the HPLC, and 2 other faculty came by to help because they knew much more about it, and that was really helpful.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, I just do this the 2 weeks when we're working on it in class every year, and that's my experience.
I'm not a machine person at all.
How was your week?
My week was okay. I think that the students are all getting to that point where they're like, there's definitely a little bit more grumpiness this week, possibly. I think people are getting tired.
Yeah.
And then there has been colds going around. So I think people are just, yeah. So I feel like there was a little more grump in my class this week. But hopefully, yeah.
How does that manifest?
Just, I feel like people get kind of frustrated quicker, or like there was a lot of bickering among students in the lab today. And so that was kind of surprising because they have been getting along well and tempers were short. So yeah, that was definitely, it felt really noticeable this week.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm extra glad it's the weekend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, there was a flu or something. I guess it's still going around, but it seemed like every lab section I had multiple people who weren't there that day, which is unusual.
Right. I think, yeah, just when people are tired, and I guess everyone is having a lot of exams and stuff coming up, and so they're just sort of irritable. Yeah. Maybe. But yeah. Yeah. And I was making them like some stuff that they kind of have been skimming through. I was like, no, like we really need to draw these diagrams properly. And there was a bit of eye rolling.
I see.
And resistance.
You're like, details.
I know. And I was the same. I never wanted to do stuff in the class. I just wanted to get out of there and deal with it on my own. You know, and so they're kind of like, don't want to, but I know it's good for them. So yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So you have our quote today?
I do, actually, and I'm getting on the Harry Potter train. Yeah. And this one is not aggressive and violent, so that's exciting.
Oh, wow.
But it is McGonagall, and I think McGonagall,
primo. She's
just so amazing. And I heard a term the other day that's something I aspire to be, and I am completely not this, but it's a warm demander. So
warm demander.
Yeah.
That's
so like,
great combination.
I know. And like sort of having high expectations, but not being a jerk about it.
McGonagall, perfect
yeah, she's
example.
Perfect because she's not, you know, she has very... Yeah, anyway. But so this is an interaction between her and Neville. Because I love Neville. Neville breaks my heart. Just, I love him. So they're talking about what classes to choose for the upper level classes, and she says, it's high time your grandmother learned to be proud of the grandson she's got rather than the one she thinks she ought to have.
Love
and
that
quote.
Oh
my God, like right in the feels.
Yes.
That's what that is. So yeah. And I think I definitely feel this sentiment sometimes with students who are like really preoccupied with very arbitrary kind of measures of success, you know, and I say that knowing that we're talking about grading today, and that's what we do is like decide what the measures of success are. But even, I don't know, you know, you see students in majors that they hate,
right?
But it's like, no, but that's what I always told everyone I was going to do, or that's what my mom wants me to do. And yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But what if you're a Neville and you're just going to succeed? You're going to be the best person at herbology.
Right.
But your grandmother's harassing you about doing something else. Anyway.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love that quote.
No
That's
one else
great.
was going to cut the head off that snake.
No one else was going to
they
do it.
weren't, so.
Had to be Neville.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so yes, but we are talking about grading today. Okay, and so
hopefully non-arbitrary.
I know. I'm like, let's throw it all out and just see what we end up being good at. But yeah. So do you have, what is going well for you with grading?
What's going well? Okay, so I always try when I'm grading, and I guess I'm mostly thinking about kind of calculation problems now, is to point the student in the right direction. So if they, got through the first couple steps and then got stuck, I like to write the next step, or and then do this, or something like that, so that hopefully if they just quickly glance through it, they get an idea of the next thing that they had been missing, wherever they were stuck. Hopefully they know how to get past that. Now that's my goal. And I think that's helpful. I'm trying to give grading comments that are helpful in the learning process. So yeah, that's one of my goals, is to try to help make the grading productive for the students rather than just a number and then we move on.
See, and I heartily agree. And I think I really like that. And I resist, I think we talked about this in exams, like I resist giving exam solutions. And part of the reason is it feels like if you can do what you do, where they can see like the method they were using and then they take the next step rather than just transcribe what you did correctly. You know what I mean? I feel like it's much more meaningful if like if you're writing like, oh, you're nearly there and the next thing you do is blah blah blah, then like it feels more meaningful than like, oh, here's this completely separate correct answer that she wrote out perfectly.
Sure, because there are lots of approaches that work to the same problem. So that's a good point. They might have been on a perfectly good track that was different than the one in my answer key.
Right. And like if they follow their own trail all the way to the end or see what specifically was wrong with theirs, because that's the other thing. Sometimes they see the correct solution and they still can't identify why theirs was not right. Do you know what I mean? And they're just and
so that's a good point. I like to identify, oh no, this part is wrong because of that, but I try hard not to just leave it at this is where you went wrong and try to point them in some correct
here's my
direction.
Coming from a lazy perspective.
Yes.
How is that for like if you like what kind of class sizes are you talking?
Well, so the what I'm going to get to and then what's not working is that I really don't like grading. So we'll get to that. But yeah, so I do. So I have my answer keys all written out, and so a lot of times I'll just write a quick. Then you do an ice table. C key. So if they want to go further, the key is there with the ice table. So that saves me, ultimately it saves me a lot of time, I think, at least in grading, to make those answer keys so then I can refer them to the key, but I still want to tell them something productive rather than just C key, because as you're saying, that's maybe not as helpful.
Here is something that's happened to me before with making the answer key. So I like do out my solutions and then I like assign points and then I go back and I start grading and I'm like, oh, that was really hard for them to do. So then like I kind of change the weighting sometimes or like something will come up where I'm like, oh, that was actually really easy. So I'm just going to, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so, and then I'm kind of like, oh, I don't want to be like married to this key. Right. I don't know.
Well, every time I make an exam, I think, oh man, this is the ultimate question. There's no way to misinterpret it. It's like there's only one possible way to approach it. And then every time you grade, I grade and then I realize there are many possible misinterpretations here. So yes, I don't put on my key how many points anything is worth. Okay. I just say like, this is how you get through the problem. And then,
I like it.
So I think that's helpful.
I like that combination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So what's working for you?
So I don't know. Mine is like almost a list of tips that I have.
Ooh,
well, then, a list of 2 tips. So it's like not like really
Number 1.
So I think the biggest thing that I was thinking of in like things that you and I have both done in terms of learning about equity stuff, and really like my biggest priority is getting grades back as quick as possible.
Oh, I love it.
And kind of partly because when I started teaching, I had very small children and like I think my daughter was like 13 months when I started teaching and anything could happen. Like she could get sick and she often did, and you know all these things just kind of like it was just very chaotic. So I was like, if I don't do this grading this instant, who knows when it could happen.
Right.
So I got into a habit of, sometimes I even try and bust it out the day of the test
That
just
is
to like
awesome.
make sure it's done. And then I guess in terms of like thinking about testing as not being just punitive but actually informative, I feel like it's really important for them to get those grades
Yes.
quickly. Like, I mean,
Well,
not
they're
at
still
light
thinking
speed,
about
but
it.
yeah, and so that they can realize like, oh, I have not been approaching this the right way.
Right.
And I have heard, not really where we are now, but I've definitely heard of professors who never give back any graded work and they never realize, oh, I was doing that thing wrong the whole time, or just kind of know where they're at. So that's my primary goal. And one thing that someone told me with quizzes, and it seems really trivial, but to not have a back on the quiz and just have it be on the front side of the page.
Okay.
And it really changes the grading speed massively. And when I was teaching at the beginning, I was teaching at least 150 kids each quarter. And so it was like each quiz would take a significant amount of time to grade. But I would just put like a big binder clip on them and you can just like race through really quick. And it's amazing how not having to turn the page over. I know this sounds so ridiculous, but it really did. Because one time I was like, that's kind of not true, so I'm not going to do it. And it really did change.
Wow.
Like if you're flipping over each one. And the other thing I think I learned in grad school, and I've kind of played around with this and always regretted it and gone back, is to grade one whole question at a time.
Oh, I love doing that.
Yeah, because otherwise you just forget what you're doing.
Right.
Or like,
how many points was this worth, and have I seen some of this mistake before? Yeah.
Yeah, and if you just grade all the question ones and like I just make a pile and then take the pile back over, grade question 2 and so on, and you can just go into almost like pattern recognition.
Yeah,
like it just gets really,
oh, I've seen this number before, that means they made this mistake, moving on. Yes.
Yeah, and like I remember talking to someone who said it would take them like 3 weeks or something to get tests back.
Man.
But they would grade one whole test at a time. And like, if you have that length of time, how could you possibly remember the things you were, you know what I mean? And it just feels, And then making things as easy as possible to grade. So,
yes.
And I think this is unique to us, but especially in physics, not necessarily having big essay type answers is huge for grading speed. And so
those are great.
They're not like super like insightful, but it's really weird how things like that can make a huge difference.
I've never heard of or thought about the page turning over thing before. This is
right. And for
new.
quizzes, it was just like, because we had them once a week, and there's a lot of kids, and so it was and it actually totally made a difference.
That makes sense. It takes time. You have to flip through every single one,
right? And so that
and I love the getting things back quickly. That is always one of my goals, although it usually ends up being more like a week.
I think that's completely reasonable.
Yeah, so I'm trying. I mean, faster is always better, and I'm always slower than I want to be. But yeah, right after the exam, they're all chattering about the questions. What'd you get on 6? Oh, what about this? You know, and to capitalize on that and to get it back the next day or something, would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Then they're not just saying, oh, what was this again? They're like, oh, what was the answer for 6? You know, so one thing that I try to do is I try to put the key up really quickly.
Oh, nice.
So that they
can
could
get
look
on there.
at that.
I really like that.
Yeah.
And I think, and then it is like, people genuinely cannot know that they're doing badly.
Right.
Until they have the first test. And then they're like, oh, that was not, whatever I was doing was not working. So,
The earlier they can learn that, the better.
And then, at the moment, my grading situation does not feel onerous because we have got really small classes we are, and it doesn't feel as,
That's good.
And sometimes, I think we talked about before, like I let them have a long period of time, like a whole lab section. So a lot of people finish after an hour. So sometimes I'll just start grading in the lab section. And so that's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yep. So what are you working on?
Yeah, just that I really hate grading.
Yeah.
Which it comes from, I'm sure, my approach to grading. I'm spending more time on it than I maybe need to. I could just write, okay, 3 out of 10, moving on. But I do really think it's important, and I put a lot of value on giving some feedback. So one thing I was thinking about, because one area that I spend a lot of time that I don't think is necessarily that valuable is deciding, is it 3 or 4 out of 10?
Yeah.
And especially the ones that were pretty close and made a couple mistakes, that's easy. The ones that were pretty far away and got a couple things, that's easy. But it's the middle ones where they got a lot of good ideas, but it really went really haywire. Those are always tough. And so I think maybe I could save some time and hopefully, some of my hate for the grading will go away. Have you ever tried this approach where you just have a couple options, like 3, 2, 1, 0? For each question. And so then it's like, were you really close? Were you semi-close? Were you pretty far away, but you had some stuff? And that's the only categorization you have to do. I feel like that might be a little easier.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing I would like to do too, but I'll let you finish yours.
Well, no, so I want to know, you haven't tried it?
Well, so I've had have you ever used the online rubric?
I have, and it's great.
It is great, and I'm so, it's this laziness because I don't want to make a rubric, but then when I do, it's so much easier. And I guess, I don't know if everyone has this, but on the Canvas software, we can make a rubric. And then when you go through, you can literally just click the boxes that are relevant.
And that feels straight into the grade book.
Yeah. And that feels like what you're saying, where you just have this quantized thing. And I really like that. And
then you could so that'd be really quick, the punching in the numbers. It saves the step of putting it in the grade book, which I actually really love the step of putting in the grade book, but just because
why is that really satisfying?
Because you check mark this entire box on the grade book.
Do you know? Okay, so can I tell you a side thing? So especially where I was before, if you put in your grades early, you would get a lot of emails from students being like, oh, I see I'm actually a B-, can you please bump me up, or whatever it is. And so people were always like, don't put your grades in until they're due. It's like a compulsion that I have to put my grades in. Because then it's just it's done.
Yeah.
And then I can see exactly how it all fell out and who did what, and there isn't some terrible mistake or some...
Right. Somebody has time to catch, oh, wait, I actually got it, whatever.
Yeah. So I don't know, but it's really weird because we were specifically advised, don't put your grades until the last minute. And when we did that, then I got a lot less people kind of emailing with stuff. And I haven't really had that here anyway. Where, the university we're at now. But it's just weird that even though they were like, don't do it, I was like, I have to. I just have to get them in and get them, out off my to-do list. I just want them gone. But sorry, I'm just interrupting.
Yeah. But so even as much as I enjoy uploading the grades, I think just entering a little rubric and have it going automatically would be good. And then you could still, there's a little box where you can put a comment usually. And so that could be the moment where you say, oh, you were really close. Now you just need to do this other thing. And that'd be pretty fast. So maybe we should do this.
I know. And I definitely, so even at the moment, I just make a rod for my own back big time. But I have been giving reading assignments and then no one did them the first week. And I was like, okay, I really want you guys to do this. So I'm going to let you do it until Wednesday. And that's the beginning of the end.
Right.
Because everyone's like, oh, I can just do it whenever. And so I think what I'm going to do is make a rubric, and it's either on time, everything answered, full points, or late.
Super easy.
Or you didn't address one of the points, and then do that. So, okay, that's my challenge for myself to actually make the rubric.
And I do find I love making rubrics. Well, I love having rubrics. And every year I'm like, oh, wait, this needs to be added to the rubric. It seems like a constant refinement kind of thing. At least for complicated assignments.
Yeah, and I think, I feel like I do a lot of grade structuring by almost intuition or something. I have rules.
Have to think about it.
Yeah, and I have rules if you forget units, you use 1 point. If it's an algebra mistake, it's 1, or if it's the calculator or whatever it is. But then, some of the stuff, it's just kind of and it's really not time efficient because that might be 5 papers in and you're like, wait a minute, this question, I need to go back and redo those because this is too hard or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So what are you working on?
So making rubrics for online stuff because I don't do it. And anytime I have done it, it's been really good.
Yeah.
And anytime I've taken an online class and they had a rubric, it was really helpful when you got things graded. And I took a class here and I remember it was a good education in how I always get so irritated that students don't read questions. And I totally didn't read the question. And it was name 3 things. And I was like, here's 1 thing. And so, and then when I was about to get really indignant and then the rubric was you didn't name 1 thing. I was like, oh yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's what I did.
So it does help with the understanding where the grade's coming from too, to have a rubric.
And then the other thing is, I feel like I'm too soft. And I kind of get I think I give way too much partial credit for really nonsense attempts.
That's a feedback loop too, because then they say, "Oh, I can just write some stuff." And
totally.
Whereas if you're hard grader, then they're like, "Oh man, I got to make a good answer."
Yeah, like I remember, or in earlier teaching situations where I was grading labs, and really only had to grade the first couple of weeks of lab like really tough, and then it just kind of like percolated through the rest of the semester.
Totally.
And so, maybe I need to
set a reminder for yourself. Beginning of the semester, grade harshly for 2 weeks.
I know. That's how I get my aggressive. Like I come in like the Snape and I'm like, listen,
yes,
this is where you're going to lose points.
Totally.
And I'm into it. Yeah. But it's a really hard art form.
It
the
is.
thing, like how do people grade essays?
I don't know.
I
have trouble with lab reports too.
Yes, me too.
Like we have a bunch of written ones, and I always, I have criteria, but then I don't know. Then what if it's confusing and I'm not sure what you mean in the sentence structure? How does that fit in? Like I'm not sure if you said what you meant. It's just very complicated.
Yeah, and I definitely, especially in the field of grading and how time consuming it is, I can see the luxury we have in our disciplines,
right?
Where like even though there is partial credit and things, there usually is a right answer. So it would be hard. Like it must be very time intensive to grade kind of longer pieces of work.
Yeah,
for sure.
Totally.
Yep.
Well, those are some good tips you had.
Oh yeah.
Try to bear them in mind.
1 page and that's it. But yeah, thanks for I'm going to try the rubric.
Yeah.
I think it will help.
I'm going to try the simpler grading criteria, I think. Just like instead of, maybe it is 10 points, but there's only 3 options.
Yeah,
right?
instead of,
like
yeah. And like, it's not going, someone told me something once about like, you can sometimes reduce your workload by like 15% and it has no impact on the student learning.
Right.
And so that seems like something where you can pretzel yourself being like, oh, but what about this? And should it be like 4.5? And maybe, and like, but really if you made it very coarse grained, it would not actually impact like negatively.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll be just like clarifying. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm saying that because I'm trying to talk myself into it too, because I end up with really complicated things. Yeah. Cool.
Right,
well, thank you. Good reflecting.
Yeah, good reflecting.
And if you want to contact us with any of your grading tips, or if you have suggestions for future episodes, we are super grateful to everyone listening and would love to hear from you.
Yes.
At our emails.
Our email address, contactprofessorpodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, we're really grateful for you guys for listening. And if there's anyone you know of who you think would be interested in this podcast, we would love for you to share it with them.
Yeah. And thank you, Ralph, for editing magic. And thank you, Claire.